Hi, I'm Stephanie Grunst, and my presentation is on Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. A little bit about Orwell. Orwell is actually a pseudonym for Eric Blair, and he was born in a little village of Motihari in Bengal, India. His father worked for the British, and he grew up as part of colonial rule. When he was older, he joined the Imperial Police in Burma after he finished school. In Burma, he worked as an officer from 1922 to 1927, but he eventually grew guilty about colonialism and became anti-imperial. He became a left-winged journalist for the British journal Tribune. Orwell continued to embrace his political writing and wrote many periodicals and books showing the possibilities of perversions in the political landscapes. Other popular works that he wrote included 1984, Animal Farm, Homage to Catalonia, Burmese Days, and Down and Out in Paris and London. A little bit about colonialism in Burma. In Burma, Britain took political control between 1824 and 1885. This was a slow process, which is why there's such a long time span. The British government confiscated land and exploited the Burmese for their own economic gain. They made English the common language in education and worked to destroy the local culture, customs, and language. While the Burmese often resisted colonial rule, they didn't gain independence until the year 1948. In the book Shooting an Elephant, Orwell is the narrator, and he is in Burma as a British police officer. One day, he is asked to deal with an elephant that is wreaking havoc and has actually ran over a man in the village and killed him. However, by the time he gets to the elephant is calm and grazing on the grass. The locals are insistent that Orwell shoot the elephant anyways, and Orwell succumbs to the immense pressure to do so, despite his moral dilemma. Orwell shows us that the pressures of authority and appearance makes him more susceptible to following the ideals and pressures from the locals, therefore flipping the role of true authority. Some of the major themes in this story are the role reversal in power between colonizer and colonized, based on the social expectations of the colonizers instilled by the colonized. There is also moral conflict of personal beliefs versus expectations of imperialism, a theme of colonial rule and the guilt of tyranny, and a theme of loss of personal choice and freedom that is found in colonialism. Story Shooting an Elephant shows how colonialism negatively affects and degrades both the colonized and the colonizers. Both become subject to dehumanization within the parameters of their expectations. The narrator ultimately becomes powerless and trapped in his role when he is forced to answer to the crowd's demands of shooting the elephant despite the lack of necessity for the killing. The narrator faces a moral dilemma and an internal struggle of ethics as he shoots the now peaceful elephant. The elephant does not die upon the shooting, and the narrator and the elephant remain powerless in both life and death. The story shows the effects of colonialism on personal identity for both the colonizer and the colonized. The first quote I'm choosing to analyze is as follows. And it was at this moment, as I stood there with the rifle in my hands, that I first grasped the hollowness, the futility of the white man's dominion in the East. Here I was, the white man with the gun, standing in front of the unarmed native crowd, seemingly the leading actor of the piece. But in reality, I was only an absurd puppet, pushed to and fro by the will of those yellow faces behind. I perceived in this moment that when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys. He becomes a sort of hollow, posing dummy, the conventional figure of a sahib. This quote shows the theme of imperialism and the role reversal in power between colonizer and colonized based on the social expectations of the colonizer instilled by the colonized. This quote encompasses Orwell's theme of imperialism and the colonizer's false sense of power and authority upon the colonized that is enforced through fear. This also shows the role reversal of colonizer and colonized and how inadvertently the colonized control the colonizers through the pressures of societal expectations. Orwell becomes the puppet of both parties and holds no true power or authority and feels as though he is only able to act in a way that is pleasing to the masses. From the beginning of the text, the narrator shows his disdain for imperialism and highlights the conflict between the Burmese and the British. Orwell's narrator initially picks a rifle that is known to not have enough power to kill the elephant if necessary, thus demonstrating that his initial intention was to purely make a show of his power. He then passes over the dead body of a local, which is crushed into the mud by an elephant. This is a show of a metaphor for British imperialism. In analyzation of shooting an elephant, Tyner states in his text, Orwell's narrator is confronted with the realization that his subjectivity, his sense of self, is inextricable from the alterity of the colonized other, and indeed of the elephant. This moment occurs through a temporary displacement. Geographic allegorization becomes a central constituent of identity. In fact, the significance of landscape is that it serves as a situational marker of subjectivity. Subjectivity must have a point of reference. The colonizer is constituted by his or her relation to the colonized. Neither subject positions are of their own choosing, each is dependent upon the other. The second quote I've chosen is as follows. But I did not want to shoot the elephant. I watched him beating his bunch of grass against his knees, with that preoccupied grandmotherly air that elephants have. It seemed to me that it would be murder to shoot him. In this quote, we see elephant as a symbol of innocence and powerlessness. The elephant is a symbol of the innocence and powerlessness of the people affected by British imperialism and colonialism. The symbolistic nature of the elephant innocence also adds a layer of guilt to Orwell's story as he realizes that there is no moral justification for killing the elephant other than obligation to authority. Tyner says Orwell's narrator, on the other hand, is powerless to fix the elephant. He can no longer give the elephant life, but disturbingly, he also is unable to give the animal death. On the surface, the elephant seems to be the symbol for the large and brutal impact of British imperialism as shown through the killing of the local earlier in the story. However, the elephant becomes Orwell's symbol of innocence with preoccupied grandmotherly air upon his encounter with it. He decided to shoot the elephant because his position makes him feel obligated to do so. Despite shooting the elephant, it did not die for another hour, leaving both the narrator and the elephant trapped in a position of powerlessness within their environment. A connection to another text that I found is the story to Room 19 by Doris Lessing. Both stories have strong symbolic uses to convey the overarching theme of internal conflict versus societal expectations. To Room 19 uses the room as a symbol of freedom and psychological isolation from her expected roles as housewife and mother, where she ultimately feels powerless in her position. Shooting an elephant uses the elephant as a symbol of the powerlessness the narrator encounters despite his authoritative role and expected understanding of his power in an imperialistic society. These are the two sources I used, and thank you so much for watching my presentation.